All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're talking about one of the most incredible figures in all of history, Wu Zetian, the only woman to ever officially rule China as emperor.
Just think about that for a second. A concubine to a father, then empress to his son, then emperor herself. I mean, she started at the bottom rung of the imperial ladder, a position with basically zero hope for real power. And yet, she climbed all the way to the top, all the way to the dragon throne. She did this in a society that thought a woman ruling was, well, as unnatural as the sun rising in the west. It was just unheard of.
So the big question is, how on earth did she pull this off? How did one woman defy thousands of years of tradition to rule all of China? That's what we're going to unpack. Her story, it's like a masterclass in power, politics, and pure survival.
Okay, so to really get a handle on who she was, you have to start with her personality. We're talking about a woman who is literally a one-of-a-kind figure in 4,000 years of Chinese history. And that will of iron that got her to the top? Oh, it was there from the very beginning.
Get this. She's just a teenager, a new concubine in the palace. And she's talking to the emperor, the most powerful man on the planet. He asks her how she'd tame his favorite unruly horse. And she says, "Oh, I can handle it. I just need 3 things. An iron whip, an iron mace, and a dagger. If it still doesn't obey, I'll just cut its throat." Wow. The emperor was apparently impressed by her guts, but honestly, he should have been terrified. This was a sneak peek, right? A chilling preview of the exact same logic she'd later use to control the entire empire.
So that kind of will of iron was absolutely non-negotiable if you wanted to survive the imperial court. It was a total viper's nest. So let's look at how she didn't just survive in that world. She mastered it. She conquered it.
Okay, check out this timeline. It really shows her absolutely incredible comeback story. When the old emperor dies, she gets shipped off to a Buddhist monastery. For most concubines, that was it. Game over. A political death sentence. But not for her. See, she'd already formed a connection with the new emperor, Gaozong. He brings her back to the palace and boom, in just 4 years, she outplays, outsmarts, and outmaneuvers every single rival to become his one and only empress.
And listen, this was not luck. This was a stone-cold, calculated political campaign. She completely sidelined her main rivals. There's this really dark story that she might have even framed the reigning empress for the death of her own baby daughter, an accusation that totally destroyed her rival. But the key move? She made herself indispensable to the emperor. She wasn't just his wife. She became his political partner. They ruled together as the two saints, so she was basically his equal, long before she ever officially took the big title.
But here's the thing about Wu Zetian. Becoming empress? That wasn't the end goal. It was just a stepping stone. After her husband, Emperor Gaozong, died, she had sons who were supposed to rule, but she kind of looked right past them. She set her sights on the ultimate prize, something no woman in Chinese history had ever even dared to dream of, the dragon throne itself.
Now, to pull this off, she had to completely change the rules of the game. First, the brute force. She kicked her own sons off the throne when they got in her way. She ruthlessly crushed any rebellions. But, and this is the brilliant part, she paired that force with an amazing propaganda campaign. She had scholars write new religious texts saying she was the reincarnation of a future Buddha. She discovered signs and omens that all pointed to one crazy conclusion. A woman ruling wasn't just okay. It was destiny. It was the will of the heavens.
And then, in the year 690, the unthinkable happened. Wu Zetian just swept aside centuries, more than a millennium, of tradition. She declared the Great Tang Dynasty was over, and in its place, she established a brand new dynasty, her own, the Zhou dynasty.
And this is so important to understand. She wasn't ruling from behind a curtain as a regent for a young son, no way. She sat on the throne herself. She founded her own dynasty. And she took the title Holy and Divine Emperor. She wasn't the power behind the throne. She was the throne. I mean, the sheer audacity is just breathtaking.
So what kind of ruler was she? Well, her 15-year reign as emperor is fascinating because it's a total study in contrasts. It was a time of real progress and stability, but also a time of brutal terror.
Let's look at the good stuff first. On one hand, you could argue her reign was a huge success. She was a fantastic administrator. She didn't care if you came from a rich, powerful family. She cared if you were smart and capable.
So she expanded the civil service exam system to find talent from all walks of life. And look at the results. The economy grew, the military recaptured important territory, and the population boomed. By the numbers, she was doing a great job.
But all that stability came at a terrifying cost. You have to remember, as a woman on the throne, she was always an outsider, and probably deeply paranoid about losing power. So to stomp out any possible threats, she created an atmosphere of pure fear. This quote here really says it all. Officials were so scared, they wouldn't even speak to each other, just exchange glances. Imagine working in that environment.
And this really gets to the heart of the paradox of her rule, the two sides of the coin. On one side, you have meritocracy. She hired brilliant guys like the famous judge Di Renji. She opened up government to people who never would have had a chance before. But on the other side, total tyranny. She had a secret police force run by guys known literally as the cruel officials. She even set up a system of secret informant boxes so people could snitch on each other anonymously. So she's promoting genius with one hand, and with the other, her secret police are torturing and executing people, sometimes based on nothing more than a rumor.
So how does a reign like this end? And how are we supposed to remember her? Is she a builder or a destroyer? Let's get into her final years and what her legacy really looks like.
As she got older, the big question was, who comes next? She realized that according to tradition, her own nephews from her Wu clan couldn't properly honor her in ancestral rites after she died. Only her sons, the Li family of the Tang dynasty, could. So she brought her exiled son back and made him the crown prince, basically signaling that, yeah, the Tang would eventually return. By 705, she was in her 80s, really sick, and her officials finally made their move. They staged a palace coup, forced her to abdicate, and she died just a few months later. And just like that, one of the most incredible reigns in all of history was over.
And if you want proof of how complicated her legacy is, just look at this. After she died, the emperors who came after her couldn't even figure out what to call her. Her official posthumous title was changed 5 times. Sometimes they called her Empress, then they'd briefly acknowledge her as Emperor, then they'd demote her back to Empress. It's like they just could not wrap their heads around how to define the woman who had both broken their dynasty and, in many ways, saved it.
For centuries, the traditional view was pretty harsh. You had these Confucian historians who believed men should rule and women should obey, and they just couldn't stand her. They wrote about her as this evil, power-mad usurper who slaughtered her rivals and turned the natural order of the universe upside down. To them, she was a total disaster.
But, in more modern times, historians started to look at things differently. They began to reevaluate her reign, focusing not just on the brutality, but on her incredible political skill. They started to see that her time in power actually laid the groundwork for one of China's biggest golden ages. And that's really the key takeaway for a lot of people today. Her so-called interruption wasn't really an interruption at all. It was more like a crucial bridge, a bridge that connected two of the greatest periods of the entire Tang dynasty. Think about it. She cleaned house, she got rid of corrupt old aristocrats, she stabilized the country, and she set the stage for the next massive golden age, which happened under her grandson. Without her, that might never have been possible. So that leaves us with the big question, right? Competent ruler or ruthless tyrant? Was she a brilliant politician who did what she had to do to survive and thrive in a world stacked against her? Or was she a brutal monster whose accomplishments are forever stained by the blood on her hands? What is the true legacy of China's one and only female emperor? Well, that's a debate that is still raging today.